Hello and welcome to another episode of DAWNCast. I'm Di Lee. And today we've got a special guest. It's Ahmad Al Sarray. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Oh, God, I pronounced it correctly.
Someone finally did.
Yeah, someone finally did. Look, I met Ahmad a few weeks ago in one of the programs that he delivered here at DAWNCast. And we thought we'd invite him on to talk about his amazing and very interesting journey. Ahmad arrived here as a refugee from Iraq in 2007. And now he's a solicitor with a local firm out in Canley Heights in Sydney Southwest, and that's JB Solicitors. Welcome, Ahmad. How are you?
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Now, tell me, well, first of all, how has your COVIDian time been? Lockdown? Been working
Are we
hard?
talking about COVID again? I don't want to talk about COVID, but yeah, it's things are going all right. I think we'll be okay. Eventually, we'll be okay.
Look, your journey. You arrived here from Iraq. Tell me why? What happened? What made you come to
here?
Australia?
I didn't have a choice really. Well, if you're familiar with the history of Iraq,
A little bit.
I think most people know a little bit. Well, we had to leave the country after the war. I think the war happened in 2003, and we just had to leave. A few years after that, it just got too crazy. Was losing friends.
So you left you left Iraq in 2003?
No. The war happened in 2003. We left in 2006. We went to Jordan as refugees. Got into the country. We didn't really have visas. Just stuck there. We were there for about maybe 9-10 months. Eventually, we hit the jackpot. We came here, and the rest is history. Well, not really history, but
Tell me about life in Iraq prior to 2003. Can you remember?
I do. I was relatively young. The interesting thing that I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to have some form of reconciliation as to what happened. So, I was able to move on, and I know a lot of people who are in my shoes that couldn't move on. And I'm hoping somehow that I can be some form of contribution to others so I can help them move on as well. I mean, life was strange, and I only realized how strange it was after I left the country. It's like Nazi Germany, because we had the Saddam, the Ba'athist party controlling which is the government, and we only had one source of news, and we were economically sanctioned, and which means my family had no money to survive. That was a constant struggle, which is we go to sleep hungry, and then we think, oh God, what are we going to have for breakfast? It was a daily thing.
How old were you then?
I was 13.
And that daily kind of living of you don't know whether or not you can have food on the table, living in the environment that it was at the time. What was going through your mind as a 13-year-old?
Well, I had no alternative. So what was going through my mind was, well, this is life. It sucks, but this is life, But now looking back at it, I mean, talk about people taking things for granted, when I came to this country and I was watching people eat like half a plate of food and throw the rest, and I was amazed at that. No one does that, And it's not about food, It's just having to be the example. Yeah. It's really hard to explain. I don't know how to describe it. It was strange, and the war made it so much worse.
I mean, a lot of the times what we saw on TV at the time was, lots of, what do you call it, fightings, the news constantly coming up saying that I think America, that Saddam had all of the hidden
weapons of
mass destructions. And first of all, that whole, and then obviously the economic sanction as well. Were the people like your family angry with the government of Iraq at the time? Were you angry with what the West was doing as well? How were you actually interpreting the whole dynamics, the relationships?
Yeah, it's actually interesting that you talk about anger. I was so angry at everything. I mean, my family and everyone else. But from my experience, even when I came to this country, it took me years to get over the anger. Because I think the reason why I became a lawyer is because this concept of justice. Why is there no justice in the world, you know? Why are all these bad things happen to us? It didn't make sense to me. It wasn't fair. I was very angry about it. And I was beating myself up for being so angry, but it makes sense. Why the things that happened shouldn't have happened. All the people who lost their lives that I know, they shouldn't have. Me not being able to see my family for years, that shouldn't have happened.
What do you mean by not seeing your family for years?
Well, my mum had to leave the country when I was, I think, 5. And I saw her again when I came to Australia when I was 17. But then when I came to here, a lot of my family members, 3 of my siblings stayed back in Iraq, so I couldn't see them. One of them I never saw again. He passed away years later. All my relatives have lost contact with them. And they weren't really living a good quality of life. They were still struggling. They still are, some of them. Is that fair? No. So
your mother left Iraq when you were younger?
Yeah.
She escaped or?
She did. Yeah, she did escape. She actually came to Australia by boat.
Right.
And there's this stigma now about people who come by boat. And to understand where they come from, no one jumps into a boat and sail into the unknown because they wanted something different. That's because it's a necessity. They have to. My mom was one of them.
And she went by herself, or?
By herself, yeah.
And how difficult was that then? So was your father and your siblings were left back in Iraq?
Yep.
And the communication between your father and yourself, your family with your mum, how did you maintain that connection between Iraq and Australia? Did she get back in touch as soon as she got to Australia?
No. I think we heard back maybe 3-4 years, maybe even more, maybe 5 years after that. And it wasn't for a while. We just didn't know where she was. And I mean, she was involved politically a little bit, and that didn't help. You know, in Iraq, if you voice your political voice and views
as a woman,
well, generally as any person, but then on top of that, as a woman, writing poetry, making fun of the government, that wasn't good. So by the time I heard back, I think 4 or 5 years, we got a letter, and it was a postcard and some writing, and we knew, well, she was in Australia. How great.
And that she was safe.
Yeah, she was safe.
And then when was the decision to make, who made the decision then for you to then leave Iraq? Who did you leave with? And under what circumstances did you leave?
So when I left, there was quite a few years afterwards. So the war happened, and we had to be there. And it's really hard to describe what the war is like. What's war? I mean, to a Westerner, it's just a declaration on the TV that there's a war. And
Tell us what it's a war like for you. Can you paint that picture as if you were there?
I can.
Paint it.
What's a war? A war is a constant fear of death. That's what it is. Really, in a nutshell, it's a constant fear. I remember that I witnessed the first siren that I've listened to, which was there was an airstrike. It was the first airstrike. We didn't know what it was. We knew the government put some equipment. Our house was very, very close to the military base back in Baghdad, and that didn't help either. And we listened to the first siren, and then there was a constant bombing that followed it. And that was the first thing we experienced. Well, I experienced about the war, and that was where the fear of the unknown came. What was going to happen? I mean, is this something? Are we going to survive this first of all? And is this something that's normal? And that was just the start of it. And then the weird thing is, as the years progressed, I mean, it was from minutes of fear to hours of fear, to days of fear, to weeks, to months. We just started to adapt. I mean,
you got used to the sirens. You got used to the bombings.
Oh, definitely. Not only that, I used to go with my sister on the roof of the house, and we used to watch the bombing at nighttime because you can see the bullets flying at nighttime. They leave a very interesting marks behind them. It's like a red, it's like a movie, basically. It used to terrify us, but then I think about a month after that, we were on the roof just watching it. Still scared, but not that scared anymore. You can't be scared forever, especially when you run on adrenaline. You just get used to it. I was 13.
Yeah. And so, sometimes I've seen some of those movies, war movies, in Iraq, and you've seen kids walking around in rubble, crumbling buildings, rubble are everywhere, and military presence of American US military outfit, and then you'll have, Iraqi outfits, people walking around. And I've often wondered, how do those children manage to live their daily lives? Like, do they go to school? I can't even see a shop around.
Right.
Where do they go to the supermarket?
Right.
Like, it's hard also for me to describe, but I see that and I'm thinking, is that a reality for you? Was it a reality for you that it became almost like rubbles or bombed buildings or men with shotguns has just become a normal thing in life?
It is. I think maybe the depiction of these things in movies is not that accurate. It's relatively accurate. The thing that it always misses is the feel of it. Yes, it was constant. Yes, I mean, I saw battles in front of me many times, actual battles between the first instance between the Iraqi army and the Americans, and at the later instance it was between the resistance and American. We were our area is a Shiite. I'm not sure if Shiite. That's a religious sectarian group full of military people. They used to fight with the Americans, but then they started fighting each other, and we got stuck in the middle. The movies capture it, but it doesn't capture the feeling of it because it's not a visual thing. It's a reality. If you look at all these rebels and people holding guns and it's an image, then it's an image. But if you see it in front of you, well, that person who holds a gun can just kill you. And that's a reality, right? And that doesn't escape. That just stays with you.
So when was the decision made for you to leave Iraq, and why?
Well, there were many reasons. Some of them were because we were receiving death threats our family is quite active in the military, and people didn't like it. And my brother was helping the American a little bit. I'm saying a little bit, just so he doesn't get in trouble. And to an Iraqi, someone who helps the Americans is a traitor.
Yes, my family during the Vietnam War helped the Americans too.
Yeah.
So we were seen as traitors.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I wish there was just a slap on the wrist. It wasn't.
No.
It was a sword on the neck. It's a very extreme thing. And there was that, and just the situation generally, it really wasn't safe. The war was easy compared to the Civil War. The Civil War was just crazy. And in 2006, there was the peak of it. I mean, the absolute peak. I know.
That's when it was between
the Shiite and the Sunnis.
That's right, yeah.
Which is both Muslim groups. If you go into our area and you're a Sunni, our area is heavily Shiite, people would kill you. And I'm not saying this lightly, they would kill you. And it used to happen a lot. And the way they know is they ask for your ID. And if you have an obviously Sunni name, they find out and kill you. And if not, if you have an ambiguous name, they just torture you until you confess and they kill you. And it happens a lot. Actually, one of my neighbors, his brother walked into a Sunni area by mistake. He got caught. They killed him. His brother got into a car, drove into a Sunni area, saw a guy walking, grabbed him, chucked him in the boot of the car, drove back to his house, got him out of the boot of the car and shot him on the street, just as a revenge. Yeah, that happened. I feel like this is like a heavy topic.
So which part were you? Sunnis?
Shiite.
Shiite, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I don't know. Can you answer why is there so much hatred between the two? And this is your perspective, though. The Sunnis, people from the Sunnis' perspective might be different.
I don't know.
Because you're kind of Iraqis, aren't you? Like, were you one group?
Oh, definitely.
And you're also Muslims.
Oh, definitely. And we never questioned it before the war. It was never something that we discussed, and it never mattered to us. I never knew who was Sunni, who was Shiite. It happened only after the war that it became a live topic.
Oh. But before that, so you're saying before 2003, it wasn't a topic.
No one really cared. Didn't even matter. Then only after. And I don't understand how it happened or why it mattered. Maybe there was some foreign influence on it. Maybe someone wanted to make a division in it. I don't know. Really, I've had my fair share of conspiracy theories that I was, exploring for years. But then I decided just to give it up and say I don't know and just live with my life.
So then, what was the main motivation, trigger? Oh, I don't know. That's use the use of the right language. What pushed you to then finally leave Iraq? You left, and who you left with?
So I left with so a combination of all that. We had to leave, and again, going back to people who came here as asylum seekers by boat. You have to leave. When you have to leave, there's no purpose or reason for us to stay. And there was an opportunity for us to do it. There was an opening which we knew if we don't take it, it's a big problem. My mother was finally able to assist us to come here to Australia. And I mean, we won the lottery with all of it. Just to get out of the country was just a huge risk because, again, as I mentioned, people kill each other by going to the wrong suburb. Imagine going through different cities. That was very difficult.
How many of you left?
So we left. 3 of my siblings stayed back in Iraq because they had kids and they had to take care of it, and the rest of them came here. I have a big family. I have 10 siblings.
Oh,
Yeah. So,
10.
Yeah, that's right.
When you said 3 left behind, I thought, oh, maybe 1 or 2 came
No,
over.
no.
No. Right.
Yeah.
So if 3 left, that means 7 of you left.
Yeah, 7 of us and my father. So
Wow. Okay. By foot, by car.
no,
How did you leave Iraq? By
car.
plane?
No, not planes, but by car.
Tell us. Take us on that journey.
Well, we had to leave very, very early in the morning, just to avoid everything. I actually didn't tell anyone I was leaving. That was a bit hard not to have some form of closure. Just
Pack up and go one
pack
morning.
up and go. Yeah, that's right. Nighttime, pretend that everything's going to be normal. I knew I was going to leave. All my friends were there, my relatives. We didn't tell anyone, and got in the car and left everything behind. And that was the last time I saw one of my brothers as well. That wasn't easy as well. I wish I had more closure. And we drove through the cities again as fast as we can, as early as we can, just so we can avoid any crazy stuff.
Were there a lot of military men or from both sides, Americans or the government around at the time? And
Oh yeah. I mean, it's I guess it's normal. There were lots of checkpoints, but we managed to go through.
you weren't stopped?
No.
Wow. Okay. Lucky.
It's like I mean, I really mean it when I say I've hit the jackpot. The probability was so low, and we just hit it. To come here, to be sitting right here, talking to you, is just unbelievable. Because I had so many friends who are more deserving than this, and they don't have the opportunity. I do. Do I deserve it? I don't know. I hope I am.
Well,
I hope I do.
And so, where did that car journey, take you? Where was your first stop?
The first stop was the Jordanian border. Made it to Jordan. Made it through all this crazy stuff. There was military that made us feel safe, which is the Jordanian military, which we haven't felt safe in a couple of years after. Before that, we slept in the cars and on the street on the border. The next morning, they let us in. And actually, they didn't let us in. Normally, what the Jordanian officers do is they want to avoid having young men, go into the country because it's just a risk, to have men in the early 20s go into a country. They easily, brainwashed. So they picked. Actually, they picked a lot of us. They picked me and 3 of my brothers, and they said, coming in, young boys, and that was really interesting, and I was just shocked. And my father just went there and pleaded with the guy. My father is really, he's good with words and very influential. He managed to convince the guy that we had the intention of going into going into Jordan temporarily, apply for a visa to Australia, and then leave the country as soon as possible. And eventually, the guy just accepted it. And again, boom, jackpot.
Another jackpot.
Yeah. Right.
And how long were you in Jordan for?
About a year.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
that was interesting.
Yeah?
Well, we didn't have visas. So we were there illegally.
Illegally?
Oh, yeah. And it was a bit of a problem in Jordan with the Iraqi refugees, because a lot of them were there illegally. So what the Jordanian police does is they go on the street, and if they find the Iraqis, they would just capture them and throw them into the Iraqi borders. So we had to basically play hide and seek with the police. So we go outside when it's nighttime. So just so we can avoid them. It was fun, actually. Actually, I really enjoyed Jordan. It was a beautiful country.
So is there a kind of a border, some kind of a
Checkpoint.
checkpoint,
Yeah,
or once, or where they send the refugees? Is there? It's like a. I mean, when we left Vietnam, we got to Hong Kong. It was a camp, so everybody got
Yeah.
pushed into this camp, like
Right.
a warehouse thing, where you warehouse everybody
No, we did go into a camp, luckily. They just let us into the country.
and just roam the streets, and
Yeah.
you find a place to stay. And
Yeah, we just managed to start a new life.
wow,
Interesting.
okay. And then you applied for, I assume, if I can assume, you applied for refugee
Yeah.
settlement.
Humanitarian.
Humanitarian?
Humanitarian visa, which we kind of applied. We went back in Iraq, and we just went there and continued, and we got accepted. I think the odds were, out of 100 applications, they pick 1 or 2, and of these they create a pool, and I think 20 or 30% of those applications get accepted, and another jackpot, we got accepted.
Wow. So when did you finally get to Australia, and what was that moment like when you landed here?
It was, man, this whole thing is very hard to explain. It was really surreal. Landed into Australia, and the most interesting thing was I thought my life was going to change, and it didn't. The reason is I was the same. I had the same thoughts, the same memories, the same beliefs. The environment was different, It was cleaner, looked nice, but I was the exact same thing. So I landed into Australia, and I felt a sense of emptiness, which I describe as safety. And I saw my mother for the first time after
5-6 years.
I think 11 or 12 years, something like that.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was really interesting.
Everything is interesting.
Yeah, it is. Because she didn't know me.
Right.
Yeah. And I met her, and she looked at me and she says, "Who are you?" And I just started crying my eyes out because my mother doesn't know me.
Yeah.
I actually cried. I cried for like 3 days.
Wow. Okay.
My mother didn't know me. Who knows me then?
So
That was interesting.
that was interesting. So you said you landed here. Your mother was there at the airport to greet you, your father, and your siblings. You felt the same, even though you expected things to be different. What did you expect to be different?
Well, I mean, my reference to the Western world was just from movies, and I just hoped. I think all these years I was just dreaming of the war to be over and me starting a new life. I was hoping that I would feel differently, and I was shocked that I didn't. It was exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. We got into the country. We drove home to my mom's place. It was a tiny place. She was living by herself, and all of a sudden, there's like, 9 new people rocking up. I was just fighting with my brothers the same. We were, screaming and everything. Just nothing really changed. And that's actually very common amongst people who come to Australia. They expect this huge difference, and it's not. Yeah, there's a bit of money, but it's just barely enough to make you survive. Yeah, the food is better, but I mean, you get used to that in a few days.
So what was it then like for the first few weeks or months in that new environment when you felt that I thought it was going to change, but nothing has changed? Except, like you said, the environment, except you said good food.
Yeah. And safety. I mean, the feeling of being safe is definitely irreplaceable. I mean, I can't describe how it feels to really feel safe, because for years I didn't feel safe at all. I mean, when we were back in Iraq, my brother used to sleep with guns next to their heads, just in case something happened. protect us, and not being able to, not having to do that when I came to Australia, that was it was a beautiful feeling. But then I think right after that I got into depression because I expected so much and there was nothing. I expected my problems to be solved and they didn't.
And what did that depression phase look like to you? How did that show up? What did you do that made you think or believe that you went into depression?
Well, I was diagnosed. In Australia, there's this beautiful thing called therapist.
Which you never had in Iraq?
No.
No, neither did in Vietnam. We never had therapists, counselling whatsoever.
And it's covered by the government. It's beautiful. And that manifested into anger. And it's actually the thing that, again, is interesting is all these feelings that I really suppressed when I was back in Iraq came back up because I wasn't in a place to experience these feelings. Then now that I'm safe, I can feel them. So I was experiencing delayed emotional reaction to what was happening, and then go through this whole ordeal. Took a few years to get over it.
Were you attending school at the time as well?
In Australia?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, kind of. I was 17, just turned 18, and I didn't speak English because I didn't study English. And I actually remember I went to an English intensive center, and the teacher said, I don't know how, I just remember the question. She said, "When did you come to Australia?" Just to test how good my English was. And I think I said thank you, something like that. And she's like, level 1, school, from the start.
Yeah, I remember those English lessons classes. Yeah. And so what level of education did, being 17, you would have gone to year 11 or year 12 of?
No. I think I finished year 5 or 6. But I wasn't really attending. I was working. So I would say maybe year 5. I kind of dropped out when I was a year 4. You
mean here, or you mean?
No, back in Iraq.
Back, right. Yeah. Yep.
So there was a huge gap because I think I properly finished year 4 back in Iraq, and then there was a huge dropout, and I wasn't attending school because I was working. Then the war happened. There was no school. I really liked it at the time, but that was a huge
mistake.
Huge mistake, huge disadvantage. Then I came to Australia, and I didn't speak English. I didn't know any of these things. But I wanted to be successful. So I studied English for about 6 months, and they put me into high school, and I did year 11 and 12.
Yep.
I was the oldest one in the school, but it's okay. And
what was that like, going to school? Where was it?
I was in Tempe High School. It's a great high school.
It is, yeah.
What was it like to be there? It was okay. I managed. I picked things really quickly, so it was kind of one. I knew the opportunity that I had, so I really took advantage of that. And I found, I think I'm a lawyer for a reason. I find
how did you make
things easy to understand?
How did you make the decision to be a lawyer? I mean, you arrived here. You were grappling, obviously, with the fact that you felt nothing has changed. You grapple with the fact that you had depression. So that would have taken you a few months.
Yeah, more than a few months. It was a constant struggle. The thing that I've kept appearing to me is I felt like I needed to earn being here because I felt like I shouldn't be here. I feel like I didn't earn it because if it was fairness, then all my friends would be here. All my relatives would be here. So there was no fairness, and I found no reason why I was picked out and they didn't. And a lot of them lost their lives and I didn't. So I had to... Have you seen the movie Saving Private Ryan?
Yep.
Where, the guy he was saved, Private Ryan,
Right. Yep.
and he spent his whole life trying to earn being alive. I felt that I had to earn it. And plus, it made sense to me to be a lawyer because there was no justice, but I can bring justice to people. It was the easiest decision I've ever made.
Mm.
And it wasn't hard achieving it as well, because once I knew I can do it, I just did it.
I think coming here and at the age of 17 and not having the language, the English language, and now being a lawyer, how did you get to that? Like, I think that's an amazing. I mean, it's an amazing story so far, but to bridge that from not being able to express or speak English and going into a career or profession that requires a lot of reading and understanding of the law, the Australian law, how did you do that?
Well, it's a journey, and I think the reason why I'm doing this podcast is not to tell you where I came from. It's to tell you how I got here and the reconciliation of it all. I mean, it was so easy for me to have the victim mentality, which is I was a victim and all the things that happened were wrong, which were true. And people should feel sorry for me. And I really enjoyed people feeling sorry for me. It gave me a sense of connection. People understood me. But I was miserable as a result, because once we are victims, we lose all the power. And there is no victim who's powerful, because that's counterintuitive. If I had the power, I wouldn't be a victim. And the hardest thing, laws wasn't hard at all. Yeah, the language was dry, and doing constitutional law wasn't.
Oh God,
wasn't really.
That's the reason why I dropped out. I thought constitutional it's taught. I thought I couldn't do it. So
very, very dry. I actually enjoyed it anyways.
Oh, really? Gosh.
That was easy. Getting rid of the victim mentality was the hardest thing out of everything I've been through. It's so easy to be a victim, and not only that, it was programmed within my brain. All my thoughts were thoughts coming from a place where I was a victim. I had no control, and to go from a victim to someone who's liberated, in charge of my life, took me until, I think I'm still working on it until today. I mean, how many years is that? 13 years. And still work in progress. That's the hardest thing. But
what was it that made you tell yourself, I'm not going to be a victim? I needed to shift that mindset. What? Did something happen for you to make that switch? And how are the two different, how would you describe the two different Ahmad? The one that was that had that victim mindset to the one that you still, I mean, yes, you're still on that journey, but you have made a transition to say, I'm going to liberate myself.
Mm-hmm. What's the difference? It's man, it's so hard to explain. Well, how did it start? Was I had an amazing friend who gave me, instead of sympathy, he was angry at me. Once I was complaining, being the victim, that things were happening to me, and he yelled at me. He's like, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he was really upset, and he said, "Just stop that. Stop being a victim." And I was angry at him at first, but then I felt the love that he had in what he was saying, and that was the start of it. His name is Mickey. I hope he listens to this podcast. And that was the start of it. I was just back in high school, and I realized this is not right. And I really realized that I was having no power whatsoever, and became just a gradual process. And what is it like to be a victim to someone who's free? It's I think it changes the quality of life. So the quality of my life was completely different, because if I'm a victim then, and all the things happen to me and I have no control over them, it will be very upsetting, very frustrating. If you say something to me and I feel like I should be offended because I'm a victim, I'll be offended at everything. And I think now I've gone too far because nothing offends me.
Hey, we're in the same spot then.
Yeah, that's right. It's actually a problem for me because I tend to offend people because I don't get offended by the things I say. People get upset. I'm like, why are you upset? It's nothing. I just called you an idiot. It's normal.
Yeah.
So there's that. And to have my life back. And now I get the opportunity to... the thing that I struggle with is I see a lot of Iraqis who have the same victim mentality. They're great people, great culture, but some of them have this victim mentality, which hurts because I know what it feels like. And I wish I can just shake them and go like, just stop. Just exactly what my friend did. Just slap them in the face. Stop being a victim. That's right. I hope I can do that as long as I live, which is give people this sense of reconciliation. I've actually written a book about what it's like to go from growing up in this war zone, and I wish I had a few hours to explain to you what it really felt like and what we really went through, and how I made this transition and how people can do the same thing. The book is in the edits right now. It's a second edition in the edits.
What's it called? Second edition, has it been published already, has it?
Oh, it was self-published, but then I retracted it because I actually got an offer. It was a good offer, so...
good.
Yeah.
You hear it first here on DAWNCast.
That's right.
His book. What's it called?
It's title undetermined.
Undetermined, okay.
It's more like a boy in a war zone, something like this, along these lines. And the reason why I wrote the book is, one, reconciliation, and it was a huge reconciliation for me to write it, but also reconciliation for others. Just get over this. Let's move on. Let's live with our lives.
When you're talking about moving on, what do you mean by that? Is it about? I find that you're the same with the Vietnamese Australian community. It's a war that happened in the 70s, and people are still carrying the burden today.
Right.
They're still, our country, it's still not free in terms of, it's still one government, it's still a socialist society, but with a capitalist lean. It's a huge capitalism, embrace of capitalism. But the families like mine who escaped communism, those generation that came to Australia, still live and have not returned, and still see Vietnam as it was in the 70s, just after the war.
Yeah.
So when you talk about leaving everything behind, is that what you're saying, or what do you mean by leaving everything behind?
That's part of it. But I see people carrying the past on their backs because there are things that could have or should have been said that wasn't said, or things that should have been accepted and wasn't accepted. And I think, and I get it. It's a defense mechanism. I used to have it. I wasn't ready for a long time to deal with the things I was going through, and I just suppressed everything and just blocked everything. But eventually, I was able to deal with it. And the reason why I was able to deal with my past is because I faced it. Excuse me. I really considered what I felt. All right, I went back. All right, what did I feel when this happened? When did I feel when I saw my auntie just get killed in front of me? What did I feel when I saw my friends drop dead in front of me? What did I feel when we lost my home? What did I feel when I left the country? Didn't say just left all my friends behind, all my family behind. That I never dealt with that, but then eventually I did deal with it, and I claimed my identity, which is I am the cause, not the effect. Even though it wasn't my decision, it's still my decision. and it's a liberation process. It's a beautiful process.
So do you think you said you're still on that journey, but do you feel content or at peace with yourself now more than you say in
the past?
In the past.
Oh, more than ever. Oh, definitely. Every day, every day gets better. And again, just it's a very simple process, but it takes when you were growing up and maybe your grandparents and your parents tell you all these wisdom, and it just goes to one ear out the other.
Yep.
And it's so simple, we just don't get it until we experience it. And I get it. Okay, it's so simple. How do I get people to experience it? I don't want to be like my grandmother and just say things and no one listens.
What are some of the simple things that you experienced that now that you get it? Can you give us some examples?
Well, what if I accepted that I'm responsible for the bad and the good in my life? What if I accepted that my auntie who got killed is my responsibility and I'm responsible for the consequences? Logically it doesn't make sense, but if once I got it, it made perfect sense. And I felt sorry, but I had the power. I wasn't a victim anymore. Once I have power, I'm not a victim anymore. And with anything, with everything. Okay, I didn't see my mother for 13 years. I grew up with no mother in a country that's very poor, and it was really hard. But what if I was responsible for that? I have the power. And there's that, and there's also completing. So there are things that I wish I could have said and I didn't, and going back and saying it, calling my father and saying all the things I wanted to say. Well, my mom passed away, so there were so many things I could have said to her, but I did say to her in a different form. And every time I did these things, I had more power. And it's not about control. Control doesn't matter. It's just being responsible. Easy to say, right? And
it's harder to do.
Right. And harder to understand, like, truly. It's not a logical thing. It's a process. It's an emotional process.
So you're now a lawyer. How are you enjoying? Are you enjoying what you're doing?
Oh, definitely. And it's I'm still in the process of reconciliation. The definition of life is a bit different to me. I don't know why, and I guess it's because the way I grew up. And I always have this, I want to say fear. That's not the right description. This desire to earn my worth. If that makes sense. Not because I feel like I'm not worthy, just because I feel like I was given an opportunity that I can do so much with it.
So you believe that arriving here in Australia, you owe it to
everyone, all the
society, and the people that you left behind. You owe to them that you have to succeed, and you have to ensure that you are contributing back because you've got this opportunity to live.
Oh, absolutely. It makes sense, wouldn't it? Right? If I don't know if we're sinking and there are 3 people here, and you manage, I'll go like, you go, I'll stay here, I'll sacrifice my life. There's only one life jacket. You take it. You go outside. How are you going to feel after you survive and I'm here?
Oh, God, yeah.
Right?
That's right. Yeah.
And why should you have gone? What if I have gone? You stayed.
You still is that conversation still very much in your head? Do you still revisit that conversation that friends of mine who should have been here better than me, should have survived or should have had the opportunity to rebuild their lives here, not me? You still have that conversation?
It's constant.
You need to shut that committee of voices. You need to close it.
It's actually, I want it to be there. It's good.
Is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't think it causes mental health?
No. It's remembering some form of passion. It's a cause. It's actually, I make myself remember. I write it on a board. I put it in front of my face. I see it when I wake up. You know.
Right. Okay.
It's good. It's great.
Is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because what's the alternative? I mean, we all have technically the same period of time. My minute is the same as your minute, and I can sit here and do nothing, or I can talk to someone and maybe hear the concern, or just help someone else, or create something. I would rather do that than I mean, I have the capacity to just chill, work 2 days a week and just drink and smoke and just relax, watch movies. I don't want that. I want to do something with the opportunity that I have, and I really see the opportunity because I never had it. All my friends never had it, but now I do.
So where to now for you? Waiting for the publishing of your book?
Well, there's a long way to go. I just started the journey, but these are just goals. And
what are your goals then? 5-year goal. What is your 5-year goal, and what's your 5-year goals? Not just one, but 5-year goals.
Yeah. Well, I'll keep a lot of them to myself. They're personal. But
hey,
and since this is going out, I'll tell you just afterwards. But
I'll share afterwards.
But the objective is to have a bigger impact. Again, everyone wants to have an impact. Everyone wants to help people, and I think that's just beautiful because that shows the general nature of people. Once we have enough, the first thing you want to do is give back. And me discovering that was just beautiful because I had a completely different vision of who people are and what they do. I want to do that. I want to have a huge impact, and I know I can help people overcome the things that I've overcome because I knew how to do it. So I know how to show people how to do it, and I just want to have as much impact as I can. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it. But the bigger picture is, eventually we'll get there.
For us, it's having that world impact one conversation at a time.
That's right. It's actually one thought at a time.
One thought at a time.
Yeah.
There you go. One thought at a time, not one conversation.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Because the first conversation is you. So once you start there, and then.
Okay. So have you gone back to Iraq since leaving it? You have any plan or any? No. You don't want to go back? No.
I don't know why. I don't want to go back.
So where is home now for you? Do you feel like a true Australian yet?
Not really. There's no sense of home. And that's not really comfortable. But yeah, I don't want to go back. I think it's more of a fear that if I go back, things somehow will go back to before, and by some freak cause of nature, and that terrifies me. So I just want to stay away from there.
Do you feel safe now?
Oh, definitely, definitely. It's not about dying, I feel like I made my peace with dying. I mean, everyone says we'll all die, and then yes, we all die. But then, what's the alternative? There's no alternative.
No. You live or you die.
That's right.
Or you pay taxes.
That's right.
that's the alternative.
Then, or you can do all three.
Yeah, there are three certainties in life.
That's right.
Was it death, taxes? What was the other one?
There's only two.
There are two. There are two certainties in life: death and taxes.
So yeah.
So what would you like to say to people who are like yourself, that are refugees, arrived here and trying to rebuild their lives here? This is actually, I don't know if I can play this during Refugee Week because it's coming up to Refugee Week, but...
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so but being a refugee yourself, what are some of the advice you can give to those who are like yourself?
Oh, perfect. I didn't know there was a refugee week coming up. When is this happening?
I think starting June the 20th or something.
Oh, that's perfect. And this could be the perfect introduction.
Yeah, could be.
To all the refugees, what do I say? I mean, I've covered it before, and I'll go through it again. You are not a victim. And the only way you can become a victim is by accepting that you are a victim, and that's your own doing. And as harsh as it may sound, you make yourself a victim. I made myself a victim. And then I made myself claim myself back. And maybe this is a cultural thing, but there's I know it's a bit sexist, this sense of a man being a man. You know, if you don't claim yourself as a man, that's a big problem. And if you're a victim, well, where is your sense of manhood? I'm sorry if this offends you, but
Like you, I don't get offended. Hopefully you guys don't get offended.
I hope so as well. But even as a human being, I mean, you owe it to yourself to be in control of yourself. And if you're a victim, then who's in control of you? Other people, circumstances. You are the effect of the cause. But if you are the cause to the effect, if you are in control of your actions, your thoughts, what happened to you and what will happen to you, then that's freedom, isn't it?
So the difference is you.
That's all that matters.
The difference is you.
That's right.
So that's it from DAWNCast. I'm Daily, and I am so grateful that Ahmad Al Sarray has joined us to share with us his journey from Iraq, arriving here as a 17-year-old teenager, to now being a successful, I believe, he's a successful lawyer and also about to be an author of a book with no name yet, but we will release the name soon. And we'd like to thank you for your time and sharing with us I know it was a very difficult story. I know that you were struggling to tell that story and trying to remember those moments. But thank you very much for being as open as you're able to. And I hope that, people get an insight into what was life like in Iraq for people like Ahmad during the war and, rebuilding their lives now. So thank you once again.
Thank you so much. And you're not a victim. Remember that.
The difference is you.
That's right.
Bye.
Thank you.